Hey guys, and welcome back to our mini series where we've just kind of been teasing out Radiant and introducing ourselves and our vision and our whole idea around the event and kind of where it was and where we feel like the Lord is taking us to. So we are so glad that you guys are back with us. Hopefully, you're able to listen to the first two episodes. And today, on our third episode, we actually brought in Amy. So Amy is a friend that I met. Amy, you might have to remind me how many years ago. I feel like it was like three,
Five,
4 years ago.
4, yeah, four
Yeah.
to five, yeah.
Yeah. So I met Amy in a group of other health, wellness, faith-based practitioners, and her and I instantly just became best friends. It's funny, right? Because I'm in Illinois, she's in Alabama. So it has been a challenge, I think, for both of us to really understand how community and friendship can span states. And you can't just, when they're having a bad day, you can't just pop over with dinner. And so it has been a good challenge for both of us to be able to just learn from each other. She's phenomenal when it comes, she gets all of my medical questions because her background is in nursing. So she often gets a lot of my questions about medications and different things. So I'm like, hey, just help me process to make sure I understand this. And then she is phenomenal with just the nervous system. And so just kind of getting to know her and throughout the years, very personally, but then also from a practitioner perspective, so much wisdom, so much just patience and gentleness. Sometimes there's just a calming to Amy's voice that when you sit with her for a long time, you're like, oh, okay, I feel better now. So we brought Amy in as our third speaker this last year to talk about nervous system. And although I think Britt and I, we had mentioned in one of our other episodes that while we all kind of had our lane we were speaking in, I mean, I feel like Amy, you kind of overlapped anyway in some of the things that you said and the things we said and just kind of the way that that naturally flowed. So that's my introduction to Amy. But Amy, I would love for you to just kind of fill us in on any other highlights about you and who you are and what you've been up to since Radiant.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Amy. I'm from Alabama, hence the accent. Yeah, I'm a nurse, like Em said. I've been in the medical field for 17 years now. May was 17 years, and the last 3 to 4 to 5 years, really deep in the holistic space, in nervous system and stuff like that. So I feel like I have quite the story as far as my nervous system is involved. I was bedbound about 10 years ago. I was a nurse that was, yeah, high energy, high acuity. I did a lot of ER and trauma and stuff like that, and then got pregnant with my youngest child, and it put me in the bed. And so we went through a hard time trying to figure out. What was happening. And so years later, it really all traced back to the nervous system. And so God called me out of the medical field and into the holistic space. And yeah, I met him and a lot of our team and really just started pouring into patients and walking this path. So it's been about 3 years that God has called me into um, yeah, building a program for patients. And so that's what we've been doing for 3 years is just really seeing hundreds of patients and putting pieces together. And yeah, when we walk through suffering, I think it's beautiful how God can use that to be able to help other people. And so that's really been the journey up until this point. Yeah, of just getting to where we are.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I was so when brought up the idea of bringing in Amy, who does nervous system work, I'm like, oh, that sounds great in general, just how she was explaining what Amy does, who Amy is. And then I met Amy, and I'm like, this is even better than I could have even pictured or put onto paper. Like, Amy, just you can tell, like, in and through, you just like
Mhm.
for lack of a better word, like radiate
Yeah.
God's the spirit and just
Mhm.
like your joy and but also your peaceful, calming presence. So
Yeah.
um
Thank you.
so yeah, Amy, like we talked about, Amy traveled from Alabama.
Yeah.
Amy,
In Illinois.
that's what I was gonna say. Amy,
Illinois.
how did you feel about traveling to Illinois in January, being from Alabama?
Yeah. So this was kind of a point of like humor between Emily Johnson and I's conversations because, in Alabama, we don't do a whole lot of snow. And especially ice and like we're not even going to discuss like the below zero temperatures. And so when she said, "Hey, we've got this event and I want you to come," I was like, "Are you sure you want to do it that time of year? Like, is that like, safe? I don't know." But what's interesting and I mean I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably feel like this too, but like I'm not a big flyer, don't love it. I love to travel, but I'm not yeah, I'm not like signing up to fly to the other side of the country to do a whole lot of stuff. And I really sought the Lord in it. Like, okay, are you inviting me into this? And I really felt oppressed from the spirit that he was. And so in all the discomfort of the temperatures and the flying and all the things, um, and there were some other things that were like in the mix. Like I didn't have a voice a few days before the event and had been sick and all that. So it would have been easy to just say, I'm not gonna come. But yeah, I got on the plane expectant that the Lord was gonna do something, and I was absolutely blown away at just taking the leap and following the voice of the Lord. And so, yeah, if I have any advice to anybody that's listening to this, that's like, I'm kind of on the fence and I don't know if I want to fly, it 1000% is worth it. Um, I can't even the connections that I've made in the last few months from the event there where God has orchestrated just pieces of my own story. It's unbelievable. Like it is 1000% worth it.
I love that.
Yeah. So, Amy, like, what do you feel? So, leading up to the event, so you got in a day early and kind of helped us with the setup and the prep. And then the morning of, as we were just like praying over the space, and then going into that day, um, how do you feel like, your expectations with what the event going into it with, the expectations that you had, and how do you feel like the Lord met those or didn't meet those, not necessarily in a positive or a negative way, and what actually came out of the event? How do you feel like those two things kind of fit together? What you expected to happen versus what did happen then, and kind of like you alluded to, even afterwards with different connections or just ways that you've seen God move since then.
Yeah. So, I know that we talk a lot about the event, the actual event, but I'm going to tell you leading up into the event, when we got there and the day before the event, y'all, the time and the patience and the intentionality that goes into this blew me away. We went to set up and I've never seen the church like this. Like it was, and I know Emily Johnson thought I was crazy because I was like, what is happening right now? All these women like showed up in these minivans and these SUVs. And it was like, I mean, this is the church, right? Like this is what this fleshes out of like, and these women that had been praying for months over this event and over every single person. I mean, we got a list of names, like every name that was coming to this event, we had prayed weeks over before even that point. So so you're expectant, like, okay, God's gonna move because we've been asking him. And just like going before him, asking for God to show up in your lives. And yeah, so they roll in on the minivans and they get all this stuff out, and it's like, okay, you do this, you do this, and it's like all set up. And so it was just this expectation of like what's happening, like God is about to move. I think we could all kind of feel it in our spirit. And so, yeah, leading up into that day and the night before, and I don't know if Emily Johnson's talked about this before, but we
So,
had a few hiccups in the road with the stomach virus, but man, the day of, it was like we just knew, like even in our weakness, that the Spirit of God was in that place. And so walking in, I just felt like a fly on the wall of like, I can't believe that I get to be here and see this, and watching the faces of the women that came in and knowing that every person there was prayed for. And yeah, them sitting down and it being like, do I know this person? Do I not know this person? Some people came along and just the spirit of God in that place. I mean, it really is radiant, right? What a name for the event. But the radiance of Christ just filled the room. And between the worship and of course the content was great. I mean, you did such an excellent job at delivering the content. Um and help, like, it's all very helpful, but I cannot get over the community. Like, I cannot get over the aspect of, like, watching the faces of the people and the way that they interacted and the moments in between, and even like the prayer, when I went in and we did some of the prayer stuff, and just like you could feel like people had walked in with a heaviness and burdens and chains and these things that had been following them. I mean, we're all in the thick of life, right? And just to feel this lightness, like God is breaking things. I know y'all know what I'm talking about when this was
Mhm.
happening. And then just the spirit of the Lord to move. And then we go to lunch, right? So then it's just full on community and just joy and laughter and peace. And yeah, it exceeded every expectation that I had. And I was just like multiple times throughout the day, like, God, thank you. Thank you that you invited me into this, but thank you, God, for getting me out of the way of myself and
Mhm.
like actually helping me follow through with coming. And just like the fruit that came from that has been, yeah, invaluable.
Yeah, I love that. I think, and Aim, I would love to know just your thoughts in this. Well, first, to backtrack a little bit. So, Amy spoke, I think, maybe last episode, you and I had talked about kind of what we spoke on and how that
Mhm.
kind of teased out, So, Amy came in and talked about the nervous system, gave just some great foundational work. We had spent the morning really diving into identity, which we talked about last episode. And how to walk that out first from a place of who am I? How do I steward what I've been given? But I need to know who I am first. Like, I need that bigger vision, that 30,000 foot view into eternity before I really understand why I'm stewarding what I'm stewarding and how best to make those decisions. And so Amy kind of tied up the morning with this beautiful, not only just kind of basic understanding, right? And I think that sometimes when things are so basic, we kind of move past them really quickly, right? Because we're like, I know this before, I know this. But like the truth is, I just don't think there's anything that we ever move past fundamentals.
Mhm.
And so Amy brought in just those beautiful foundational fundamentals. Once again, whether you knew them or didn't know them, it was either a reminder or, a new learning about the nervous system and just bridging a lot of gaps for people because they had heard what Brittany and I had said about identity and about why God had called them there and what we felt like the event was about. And then Amy came in with like, hey, if you're having these emotions, right now as they're speaking, this might be why. Like this, like let me invite you into what is going on in your body, in your mind, and your nervous system. And then she led us through this beautiful time. Emily Kresnikowa is just kind of on keys, giving some background. Sometimes I think music is helpful in these moments of prayer because our brains wander and get distracted. And so it just kind of, again, from a nervous system perspective, brings kind of a peace into our wandering minds. And then Amy just led the whole group just through some questions and just invited the spirit to come and teach and speak and just kind of that was beautiful. I think that was a beautiful way we kind of like ended the morning. And
Mhm.
then like Amy said, we went into lunch and it was like, whew, it was a heaviness that was then fed by a physical like
Yeah.
let's feed your belly. We just hopefully fed your soul. Amy again, her voice, everything just brought. I mean, I think we knew we needed a lot of tissues,
Mhm.
especially for that part of the day. And I think that was probably when most of the tissues were used was when Amy was up there. Um, just leading people, right? Because we know that what we say is only goes so far, but when we allow space for the Holy Spirit to speak,
Mhm.
that's what breaks the chains. But Amy just facilitated that so well, right? We know that there's a kingdom principle of when we have invited and spent years inviting the Spirit into our mind, heart, soul, body, there's a dwelling that happens and an abiding that happens that when you walk into a room, you can tell who's been sitting with him, who smells like him, who,
Mhm.
sounds like him, and that is Amy through and through, right? Embodies that when she steps into a room. And so that was just so precious. And then the end of the day, again, she kind of walked us through some physical applications and exercises in order to um, bridge the gap of, well, what do I do to calm my nervous system down?
Yeah, I thought it was the perfect blend of, well, like we talked about on the first episode, like our three primary goals
Mhm.
were to create a space where we merge like faith and wellness together because we don't feel like those things can exist separately or that they shouldn't exist separately, to create a community for women and to leave people looking to Jesus more radiantly. And Amy like brought, I don't even know if we shared to Amy that those were our goals, but Amy
Yeah.
blended those things and then really um, brought the blend, I guess, of mind, body, and spirit, and how those things, as you said, like she very graciously and greatly facilitated, I think is the best word. Like you're just a great facilitator in those questions to lead people to Jesus and to do that in a community atmosphere and in a way that we are evaluating what's happening in our bodies and what we're feeling physically, as you're bringing up these questions, like what are you feeling physically? But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with what I feel. It ends with now, like, what is the Lord doing in this too? And so I thought, and we got a lot of awesome feedback about the sessions that Amy did.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Amy, can you give a little bit more, do you mind telling a little bit more kind of what went into your part with planning what you wanted to say? And so we had talked a little bit on the previous episodes about how it was difficult to take like all of these different ideas and bring it into one and feel like we wanted to talk about all of these different things. And how do you talk about everything that you've been learning and living out and teaching for 17 years and bring it into like 2 30-minute sessions? So how did you seek the Lord in that, and how did you follow his leading? And maybe even some highlights that you want to add that we didn't talk about that you brought
Yeah.
into teaching.
Yeah. I think my prayer has always been like, God, help me not to overcomplicate it.
Mhm.
Right. I think there's a simplicity in just brokenness sometimes and like the place that we find ourselves. We get in that hustle and bustle of the day and um yeah, and of life. And then there's this stillness that happens at night, right? When we're by ourselves and all the voices quiet and the narrative that's the internal narrative of maybe the brokenness or the hurt or the shame or the guilt or the anxiety or the fear or whatever that narrative, it's like the volume starts to turn up. And so my prayer has always been, God, can you simplify this and cut through the noise? And how do we go after the heart of that? Because yeah, we can get into all the technical terms of what's happening in the body, but if we don't get to the root of the issue, then what are we doing, right? And so yeah, that has just kind of been my prayer. And as I've worked with patients up until this point, everybody's story is different, but they're all very similar, right? They always go back to a need of Christ and a need to hear his voice and an understanding of what my true identity is, and to be able to break off the false beliefs, that narrative that maybe we had in childhood or maybe we had in our adulthood or whatever that narrative is of who we are. And yeah, we're just living in those actions of today and they're driving how we're moving in the future. And so, yeah, that preparation up into this was just like, God, we just seek your face, right? We just need, there's a brokenness in us that like we can't fix, and we've tried and we've done all that we can. And so, will you come in and enter into the room and help us to simply just seek your face? And so that really, yeah, that was kind of like, okay, how do we put these very simple things together on what our body's doing and how to seek the face of the Lord? And that's what we did. We went in and talked about, hey, this is logically what's happening in our body when we feel certain things and in our mind. And we got a lot of head shaking, like people like, oh, yes, that sounds very familiar. Um, but then it was like, hey guys, let's hold hands together and kind of navigate out of this. And the Lord obviously is the lead of that. And so, yeah, that's where the prayer came in and just asking simple questions and getting before the Lord. And everybody's answers are different, right? But just pulling those walls down of, can I just meet you face to face? Like, God, just let me um, just be at your feet. And a lot of people think, which is interesting to me, because I have felt this before, maybe in the past, but when I work with people, a lot of them are afraid to ask the Lord certain things. You know, they're afraid to get in that place because they think that the Lord is going to have something to say about maybe their life or their shame or their guilt. And the beautiful thing is when they actually get before the Lord and they ask Him in the way that we did, they're met with, I love you. Like, you are enough for me, and I will meet you where I am, and I am faithful, and it's going to be okay. It's like this piece of a place that I can't generate if I wanted to, and y'all can't generate. And it's like, so yeah, I think that that's kind of how I prepared. And then I went into it like, God, I can't fix anybody. I mean, as a practitioner, I learned this a long time ago. I can't fix anybody.
Right.
But God, you can. And you can enter into the place where they need you the most. And if we can just open the door for that and facilitate that, then God is always going to do what God does. He's always going to be faithful to the call. And so, yeah, that's how we went into it. And then the afternoon, like you said, was more, all right, when we're stuck in our head and we can't get out of our head, how are we going to be able to release some of this in our body? And so, luckily, by the grace of God, we have a physical therapist in the house. that, I'm like, not, like, hey guys, you move your neck this way and do this and do that. And Brittany's like the perfect example of like, okay, let's do this the correct way. But, but it was fun to kind of shake it out and get your body moving and just get a good laugh out of people. And when we started moving areas into that more somatic and pull them out of their stress, their sympathetic, right, into their parasympathetic, the yawns and the sighs of, oh man, my body's relaxing, was really
Yeah.
fun to watch and listen. And again, we all got a pretty good kick out of it. So yeah, it was just, I mean, that's how we prepared and how we went in. And I feel like God was really faithful to like show up and,
Yeah.
and meet us all where we were.
Yeah. And again, like we talked about a couple episodes ago, we generally knew what each other were talking about, but not specifics. And Amy, we had talked about how it was like just like these threads that just were woven through each of our talks that we could never have intentionally done or created. And just to
Right.
see how the Lord, like, it's almost like He wrapped all of our things up together. And it was just so sweet to see how the Spirit was woven and through each everything that we said. We're like, oh yeah, actually Em talked about this earlier. And so you can now we're building on that. And so so Amy, is there anything else? I mean, you've done a great job at talking about what you talked about, what you got out of it, what you saw others, and just to kind of help. We just really want to help people prepare and know what to expect. That was we had a lot of questions about that initially. And to be honest, we didn't know how to answer those initially. But now that we have had one, that we have done one of these, we know generally, how we can help other people prepare and know what to expect for next time. So, but Amy, is there anything else that you feel like you need or want to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, guys, be here. Like, come to the event. And I know that that feels kind of forceful, but like, there is, you will not regret it, and it's one of those things that you can't explain, the just pure movement of the spirit in the room and the community and the gifts that come from just the simple yes. Like, I know it's not easy. I know, like, a lot of us have kids and we've got work and we've got jobs, and the fear of like, do I travel by myself? Do I not? And do this for you. Do this for you. Like, sign up, take the leap of faith. Like, God will show up and meet you where you are. And it doesn't always have to look like you have a nervous system disorder or you're a tired mom or whatever. Like if you're just hungering for Christ and you just want to be in the room with like-minded people, or like if you're like, I'm completely and totally broken. And if I walk in the doors, people are gonna, whatever your narrative is of fear, right? That the enemy's trying to tell you, it's not true. Like we welcome you with open arms. We want to see you. Like we are praying over you. We love you. Like we want you to experience Christ in a way and community in a way that you never have before. And so yeah, that's just my advice is like do it. Come, sign up, call your friend, bring your sister, right? Like go into your Bible study group and say we're all going to take a girls trip and we're going to fly to Illinois and we're going to make it a thing. Like we welcome you and we want you to come. And
Yes.
yeah, let me say this too. I After this was all over, we went back to Brittany's house to eat dinner. And I sat next to Emily Kay, which is like, has the most beautiful voice on the face of the planet. But I had no idea that she's also a graphic designer, like never in a million years. And had been working pretty hard on something for work that the Lord was asking me to do and had been praying like, God, I need a graphic designer. And so what happened is because I said yes, because I showed up, because I went to this event, and not only did I meet the Lord in such a beautiful way, but that spurred a conversation with the person next to me that was like, I'm totally a graphic designer and would love like to be able to enter in this. And like Brittany, who is also now on part of this program, and Emily has always been a part of it, but it's not just about what happens in that room. Like God takes things from that room and the fruit that continues in your life after it is like still blowing my mind. And I was a speaker, like I
Mhm.
can't even imagine as a participant the way that God will continue to follow you out of the doors. And so, yeah, come, please.
Awesome.
We'd love to see you.
Well, yeah, I don't think we could have said that any better. So we'll leave it at that. But Amy, thank you so, so much for taking the time to do this. It's just always such a blessing and a joy to talk to you and hear you speak these words of encouragement. You are doing a real, real work, God's work in the world right now. And so we are so blessed to have had you there and to have you speak with us today. So thank you so much. And thanks, guys, for watching. We have a couple more episodes, so stay tuned for those.
Thank y'all for having me.